Good afternoon and welcome to our special meeting of CDBG Advisory Committee. Let's have a roll call, please.
Sure. Committee members Armenian,
Present.
Avedisian,
Present.
Manukian,
Present.
Vice Chair Gabrielian, Quinones Gabrielian is absent, Chair Garibian.
Present.
The agenda for the October 24th, 2022 special meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee was posted on or before Friday, October 21st, 2022 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Item 2 is minutes. At A is approval of the minutes of the August 29, 2022 CDBG Advisory Committee special meeting.
Anyone on the,
I so move the agenda, the minutes of the 29th.
Second.
Okay. Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Avedisian,
Yes.
Manukian,
Yes.
Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian is absent, Chair Garibian.
yes. What's next?
Next is item 3, oral communications. We don't have any cards or callers. Item 4, action items. At A is selection of CDBG Advisory Committee officers. At 1 is selection of chair for the term October 2022 through October 2023. And at 2 is selection of vice chair for the term October 2022 through October 2023.
I have a question.
So before I turn it to, we have some questions in regards to that, so.
Certainly.
Do both positions have to be elected at the same time? Or can we split it?
I would suggest doing it at the same time, just in case somebody wanted to nominate the same person for the other position, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, and if we want to nominate, say, Ms. Gabrielian, she's not here, can we do it, or we should wait, postpone the meeting and, or the election for her to be present?
I did ask that question of our city attorney and was told that the person does need to be present in order to accept the nomination.
All right, thank you.
Any suggestions of questions?
I'll make a suggestion. The protocol we followed typically is that the sitting vice chair would be nominated for the chair, although I know that that's not a requirement. But in order to follow that past protocol, I would suggest that we postpone this agenda item to our next meeting when, since Vice Chair Gabrielian is not present, and that's who I would nominate as chair following our protocol. I'd like to suggest to the committee that we postpone this until the next meeting.
Can we do that?
Yes, you may, if the majority wishes to do that,
So,
or if the chair does.
Yes, I second it.
do we have to vote on it, or just a suggestion that
if-
we
if-
agree upon?
All in agreement, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed? No, okay. So, yes, we'll move it to the next meeting, which should be in March, and I'll remind everyone of that.
Sounds good. Okay.
So
let's-
next is item 4B, preliminary proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category. At 1 is a motion to approve the preliminary proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category.
Chair Garibian, members of the advisory committee, we have a PowerPoint presentation to go over this upcoming preliminary proposed 2023-2024 CDBG funding allocation plan. We are recommending the approval of this preliminary proposed plan. And we want to give you a bit of news out of Washington. Congress has passed a continuing resolution through December 16th, 2022 to avoid a government shutdown. And it looks as though they are going to wait until the midterm elections are over to make a final decision on that budget. So appropriation levels currently will remain at this, they're going to remain at this current level this year until the final budget has passed. We are estimating that the 23-24 funding totals will be the same as last year's. Now, this continuing resolution also means that staff may not be able to present the committee with a final budget when we meet back in March. Therefore, we'll most likely implement that CDBG contingency plan that we had that was similar to last year's. So please keep that in mind. So just to give you a breakdown of what we are estimating for 23-24, we're estimating 1.7 million. We're also including $35,299. This is from returned Armenian Cultural Foundation after-school program. This is a public social services program that was with return money, but can only go into capital improvements. So just please keep that in mind. So the total estimate this year, this upcoming year, is going to be $1.735 million. So to break that down even further, $340,000 of that will go to program administration, $255,000 to public social services because there's a 15% cap, and then $1.140 will go to capital improvements. So there, we wanted to break that down even further. $740,299 will go directly to community CIP projects, those proposals that come in. That's 65% of the capital improvement estimate. And then $400,000 will go to the city's pre-designated 23-24 Fremont Park renovation project. Please be mindful that this was actually an approved, the committee actually approved the Fremont Park renovation project at the March 7th meeting of the advisory committee. So this is just basically a kind of a reminder that this is part of the funding allocation plan that's coming up. So the staff recommends that you approve the preliminary proposed CDBG funding allocation plan for 23-24, including the $400,000 in pre-designated funds for the city's 23-24 Fremont Park renovation project. This concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Any questions, anyone? Yes, Mr.
Could you refresh my memory if you went back to the 35,000 that's returned? What, we discussed that last time, right? But it's showing up in next year's allocations?
Chair Garibian, members of the committee member Armenian, that's a really good question you have because this particular project was returned right during the committee meeting season. So it was returned right when we were having our community meeting, our committee meeting with the CDBG Advisory Committee. Therefore, we couldn't even put a report together for the committee, a proper report together to actually allocate the funds back then. So therefore, we had to wait on this, and now we're allocating the funds to 23-24 year.
I just want to make sure it's the same money, so it's just rolling over into the,
And as a reminder,
when it happened.
right, and then there was an additional, they also returned their CARES Act funds, CDBG CV3 funds. That actually that's still going to be also allocated in the future once we get a report for the committee and we kind of consolidate all our CARES Act funding as well. So you will see
That's
the
coming
ACF.
back from ACF as well?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And how much, do you have an approximate amount, how much that is?
I want to say it's in the 30,000 range, about 31,000. They didn't have too much, but this was a pretty big amount, so.
And that can only go to certain things, right?
This one will only go to capital improvement. CARES Act funds will also be used for public social services if the committee chooses it to go there.
And there is no timeline, sorry. There is no timeline, or we don't have a timeline that we need to spend that. But especially with the CARES Act, because that was a special funding.
Committee member Avedisian, there is a timeline. There is a period of performance for the CARES Act funding. The timeline is through 2026. So there is some time. We will be bringing you a report in March, giving you basically a breakdown. I don't want to give you totals now, but estimated about $160,000 will be allocated. So it's a pretty good chunk of money for the CARES Act. We do have until 2026 to spend that down, and because we can still spend it down through public social services, staff feels pretty confident that the agencies will be able to do that in a 2-year period if we start the contract period in 2024, for instance.
One more question, if I may. Now, that funding that comes back from the CARES Act, that would be a new application process? Oh, sorry. With the CARES Act funding that coming back, with all the total, whatever the dollars amount is, would that be a new application process, or you will like the other applicants, or this is already somewhat the organizations that we know they're going to take it?
We will actually put together a new RFP process for the CARES Act funds, for return funds. So if the committee chooses, again, we will have agencies apply because the funding is very specific. It is specific to, we call it the PPR tieback, prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. So they have to be very specific in their proposals that they include that item in there, and that's the criteria for the CARES Act funds. So that being said, we will come back with an RFP prepped and ready for the advisory committee to approve, and then we'll release it to the agencies.
All right, thank you.
So that's so the 35 that's on the screen right now, that's actual social services money being returned. That's being put back into capital, correct? Because
That
that's
is
the
correct.
rule? Okay.
That is correct.
And then the CARES Act amount that ACF will be returning, that has to go back into a CARES Act process.
Correct. Which is open to public social services and capital.
But it has to be to those the three Ps,
Right,
Right.
PPR tieback.
PR, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question. It's further down the agenda that we have that for the Pacific Park. Obviously, we're estimating $400,000 for Fairmont. Is any of the Pacific Park that further down, is that going to come back up next year? Having some funds allocated for the Pacific Park, even though not this year, but because we're getting but we're returning some of it. But is next year going to be agenda to have some funding going towards that park again? So I don't want to have two parks, funding for two parks the following year, you know what I'm saying?
Chair Garibian, do you mean that we might come back and ask for additional funding for Pacific Park? That might be a question for Mr. Bulanikian to answer.
Chair, or Garibian members of the committee, we won't come back to the committee and ask for additional funding for Pacific.
For the Pacific Park?
So our goal is to submit one project per year for parks.
Okay, so that would be, okay, that's why I want to make sure that, we will. Okay, thank you. Okay, next. I think we need, yeah,
I'm sorry. So we do need a vote, a
Approve it.
motion and a,
anyone?
And is the motion to approve this budget
to approve the preliminary proposed
recommendation?
funding
Okay.
allocation plan.
I make a motion to approve the preliminary proposed allocation for
Second.
CDBG.
Okay. And Avedisian seconded.
Yes.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Avedisian,
Yes.
Manukian,
Yes.
Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian is absent, Chair Garibian.
Yes. Next item.
Carries. Item 4C, fiscal year 2023-2024 CDBG program priorities. At one is a motion to approve the fiscal year 2023-2024 CDBG program priorities.
Chair Garibian, members of the advisory committee, part of the development of the 23-24 annual action plan is the need to determine program priorities for the upcoming year. We have prepared for you a PowerPoint presentation to describe the priorities, and this year in particular, we worked a little bit differently than we have in previous years to develop program priorities based on committee direction. So traditionally, we are to do an in-person community meeting held at a public place where residents would be invited to give their input. At our last community meeting, direction was given because of post-pandemic to include maybe alternative ways to gather community input or more input. Are we getting enough input? So staff gathered some multiple platforms to assess community need, and they are right up there for you. We had multiple community need platforms, including the traditional in-person community meeting. We had that on September 29th. We had our committee member, Manukian, attend that evening. We had six people in total attending and participating. And then the following week, we had a virtual community meeting on October 5th. And that was via Microsoft Teams. We had our chair, Garibian, attend that, and we had 7 people attend and participate in that meeting. We also gave the option and continued to give the option of email comments. We had an email comment period from September 26th through the 9th of October. We had 17 email comments received and recorded. That was a pretty good record for us. Usually we get about 4 or 5, or we don't get any. And then for telephone call-in, we actually had 5 telephone call-in comments received and recorded. So this year, Ms. Alexanian and I worked on an online community needs survey. This, again, based on direction given from the committee from last meeting in August. From September 26th through October 9th, we released a community needs survey, and we received 279 responses. So that was a pretty good number to analyze and look through all that feedback that we received. So for the notice of the community meeting, the input, we released it through newspaper. We actually did a postcard mailer to 4,000 households in that census tract where low-income individuals and residents live in Glendale. We also had it on social media. We had it on our department website, newsletters. We released it to a nonprofit email distribution list and our community services and parks distribution list. And then, of course, we also promoted the notice of the community needs survey. We also did that on social media, but we also partnered with Glendale Unified School District so they could release it on their social media and through Peach Jar. We posted it on our department website, newsletter, our nonprofits. We asked them to have their clients please submit their responses to the needs survey, as well as our CSP distribution list. So giving you a little bit of data analysis, it is in Exhibit 4, but just to give you kind of a small breakdown of the responses. Survey was available in English, Armenian, and Spanish. We asked 15 survey questions, asking respondents to rank priorities, and then we call them sub-priorities. And then respondents were also asked to tell us about their lived experiences. We felt that that was important to see. Were we touching upon families, LGBT community? Were we touching upon people who were taking care of disabled? The average time to complete the survey was 12 minutes. So out of the 279, 234 people, or 84%, identified themselves as Glendale residents. So the majority were Glendale residents. We also had La Crescenta, Montrose, Verdugo City residents, and we actually had 1 unsheltered respondent. We also wanted to break down to see if we had homeowners and renters. So 52.3% identified themselves as homeowners who responded, and 47% were renters. And then we really wanted to know what their preferences were to receive and learn about city meetings, because that was a major part of trying to understand what the residents want. And 154, or 55%, prefer to learn about city meetings using email. And 61 preferred to learn about city meetings through social media. So a majority wanted email and social media as a way to learn about our meetings. Now, respondents also ranked public social services priorities and community facility improvement priorities in order of importance to them. So just to give you the public social services rankings, number 1 was mental health services. So that was the number 1 in ranking. Number 2 was senior services. Now with senior services, you also had that sub-priority. Within senior services, senior housing was most important. Senior nutrition was next, and then senior recreation, and on and on. Number 3 was youth services. So they ranked youth services number 3 in order of importance, and that includes after-school programs as the top sub-priority, and child care services is number 2. And then number 4 was homeless services, and again, this sub-priority for homeless services, of course, a running theme, health and mental health services and housing for the homeless. Number 5, services for the disabled. Number 6, employment services, which include job search and on-the-job counseling, is the top 2 in that sub-priority. And then lastly, legal services was important. And that included fair housing and healthcare services within the legal services sub-priority. Any questions on this before I move to community facility rankings?
One quick question, Mr. Chair.
Go
I understand the survey was mailed out or sent out with multiple languages. Was the flyers to invitations to join the meetings went out with a multilingual?
Committee member Avedisian, yes, it was. Actually, it is a city council directive to do so. So we actually had the survey in 3 languages available to respondents in 3 languages, as well as the flyer inviting folks to take the survey in those 3 languages.
What about the flyer that to join, for people to join to those meetings, online or email, whatnot?
All 3, yes, all 3 languages were available for both the community meeting flyer as well as the survey flyer.
Thank you.
Continue.
Thanks.
So the program priority survey results for the community facility improvement rankings, for number 1, outdoor parks and recreation facilities, residents felt that that was their number 1 priority to address. Number 2, libraries. 3, indoor community centers / senior centers. Number 4, youth and child care centers. Number 5, neighborhood improvements. Number 6, homeless day centers. And the 7th, health centers. So this is the ranking for CIP. Now, we also looked at, and we do this every year, we looked at the American Community Survey. It's a data analysis of the U.S. Census, basically, from 2016 to 2020. This is the latest results. And then we update our list of key demographic indicators, and we do this just to see what the trends look like. And 13.9% of Glendale families in 2020, in this particular American Community Survey, are considered below the poverty line. Just as a comparison, it was 3.4% the previous year. 17.7% of Glendale's population are children under 18. And then there are 33,856 persons 65 and older living in Glendale, which is about 17.6% of Glendale residents. So just to give the committee an idea of what the percentages are of the folks that live in Glendale, the residents. Now, median rent in Glendale is $1,711 compared to $1,534 in Los Angeles County. Again, this is the American Community Survey. We actually put in your key demographic indicator in the exhibit. We also use Rent Cafe because we feel that the 1711 is a little low, but Rent Cafe updates their information a little bit differently than the American Community Survey. So we want to give you kind of a comparison of both.
Can I ask a quick question? What is the, because later on in the packet you had mentioned what the median income is in Glendale, but you mentioned the below the poverty line percentage. What is the considered poverty line?
Oh, we'd have to bring that up. We'd have to bring the, we'll get, and I'll have
Do you
Ms.
use federal?
Kabanjian. We do. We use,
Okay.
we do have a ranking sheet that we use and we update each year in June. We'll have that available to you. I'll have Ms. Kabanjian bring it up. We actually use that with our community agencies so they can list their level. We call it level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. Anything between level 1 to level 3 would be considered extremely low to average. And at this time in Glendale, $90,000 and under is considered low to moderate income.
Okay, below 90.
Below 90,000 for a family of 4.
So in the packet you mentioned 70,000, approximately 70,000 as the median household income
That's
in
the
Glendale.
Census Bureau.
County.
No,
Oh, yeah, Glendale is 70, yeah, sorry.
it just says key demographics. I don't know what, is that from census?
Yes, that is
Okay.
from the U.S. Census.
Okay.
Now, again, poverty line is also, poverty is the extremely low to low. There's also moderate, because CDBG funding is for low to moderate income individuals, so we rank it that way. When we pull that up for you, we will show you exactly what those numbers look like.
That would be really
Yeah, we'll definitely do
helpful, I
that
think.
for you right now.
Particularly, I'm just curious, like, when we say the median household income is 70, and you're saying below 90 starts to go to low to moderate, and then,
Well, it's moderate,
Yeah.
right? That's the average median income,
Yeah.
is 90,000 for a family of four. Interestingly enough, this exact question came up at our community meeting, in the in-person community meeting. So we actually pulled that up for the individuals that wanted to see that.
last question is, do you have that sort of data based on geography within Glendale? Like parts of Glendale that are, higher versus lower?
We do. So the census tract, actually, that's what they do, the census blocks and the census tracts. That's what they actually do. So they let us know that the area in and around Pacific Park Community Center in particular, and there's another area by Cerritos Elementary School. Those are considered low-income census tracts. So we use that and we target those populations in particular to see what their needs are.
Yeah, we all know that basically South Glendale is lower than North Glendale, but it would be really good if we can get a little bit more targeting there, not just to generally say South Glendale, but that way, especially when it comes to parks or other types of services, to see where we can target in the future, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Ms. Moreno, did you, okay. I think they got the levels. We're gonna share the income levels with you, the most recent ones, the current ones we use with our community agencies, so the committee can see.
Committee member Armenian, on the third point on Exhibit 2, it actually gives the location of the Adams Street, Maple Street, and Cypress, containing 25% under poverty level.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Iris. So the medium, if you notice on the bottom, median family income is actually $91,100. But if you look at level 1 and level 2, that's really what we're looking at when we target poverty, especially level 1. So level 1 target of extremely low income, for instance, a family of 4 is $35,750. Level 2 is up to $59,550. Those are considered low income. And then you have moderate, up to $95,300. But if you go to level 4, that's when they're not eligible for CDBG, if that makes sense.
Of course.
Or at least 60% need to be eligible for CDBG, I should say. Any questions on this?
No?
We get our results from HUD every year. We update this in June. They give us the latest numbers, and then we plug those in. And we use this, Housing Division uses it, and the Homeless Services Division uses it.
Okay.
So we'll go back to the, thank you. Okay. So this was the American Community Survey data analysis. Let me move forward. Okay. So then we're going to look at the total program priority determinations based on all this information that was given to us. Obviously, the priorities continue to be in line with our five-year consolidated plan that was approved from 2020 to 2025. Our priorities, of course, are based on feedback we received from our meetings and our survey. And then ranking the priorities we used the survey to rank our priorities, and then we felt that that was the best representation since we had 279 respondents versus about 35 to 40 responses for the community meeting. Regardless, we wanted to have resident feedback be determined, and then we kind of took, what we did was we looked at the trend, we read through all the comments to see what was a running theme. And of course, we have 3 bullet points for you. The running theme, of course, number 1, housing concerns related to limited resources, and of course, our rent increases in Glendale. That's always a number 1 priority. Parks and open space development, improvement, and services continue to be a priority. And then residents also express the need for additional programs for childcare, mental health, homeless services, youth and senior programs. So as you can see, the community meeting responses versus the survey responses are very similar and in line with each other for Glendale. Any questions on the program priorities?
Quickly on the survey, do we have the age group? I must have missed it, is there, or we don't have an age group of the survey?
We actually didn't ask the age group. That's one question we didn't put in. We were really trying to figure out how we could, well, we definitely wanted to know if they were Glendale residents versus La Crescenta residents, because we did have Glendale Unified School District participate, so we wanted to see where the responses were coming from. But we didn't ask the age range. We did not do that. We could consider that next year for sure.
Yeah.
We're learning a lot from each. I think we learned a lot from this particular survey.
And, yeah, obviously shelter is number 1 for every community, no matter where. That's a priority, which is one of the highest expenses, but I understand the rest of the question.
Just one question. So on this Exhibit 2, which was the key demographic indicators, there's a lot of great information in here. The source is from that survey? Or is that the survey was separate?
Oh, the survey was separate, Committee Member Armenian. Exhibit 2, the key demographic indicators are from the American Community Survey through the U.S. Census.
Through the U.S. Census, okay.
No, I wasn't going to go into the what's in our booklets versus what you just showed, but since we are getting into a quick question, most of the comparisons are to county, but when it came to the parks, we went nationwide. Why do we compare the size of the parks to, instead of LA County, we went nationwide comparison? I mean,
Oh, that's because we had asked, our staff person had did a review for us on this, and they go through the California Parks and Recreation Commission, and they look at information from that, and they gave us a breakdown of state and national. So I think it's ranked that way. The parks is a little different. It wasn't part of American Community Survey as a particular topic, so we wanted to include that since we are in the Parks Department. So I think that's the reasoning why we have the national average.
yeah, because that could, I mean, Wyoming
Makes sense.
versus California, Los Angeles.
Also includes national parks.
All right, any other questions? Okay, next.
Next would be the motion to approve the fiscal year 2023-2024 CDBG program priorities.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were going to talk about the community facilities ranking. Did you address that?
I can actually go over that again if you'd like. I'd be more than happy to. For the community facility improvement rankings, we had 7 basically, and the top ranking is outdoor parks and recreation facilities, so they rank that in order of importance to them. So outdoor parks and recreation, then libraries, indoor community centers and senior centers, then youth child care centers. 5th was neighborhood improvements, and then 6th, homeless day centers, and then lastly, health centers. So their top pick is outdoor parks and recreation facilities.
So comparing, I mean, that comes from, I think, the 12th question on the survey. And I'm curious because, I'm sorry, I didn't ask
No, go
permission
ahead,
to
go ahead,
speak.
go ahead.
It asks
easy
priorities in
chair.
order of importance to you. So I feel like if I was asked what's important to me, I would literally think about what's important to me, which would not rank homeless day centers or mental health centers or anything like that higher because it's for me. So, and from the survey, it seems like there was only one question regarding facilities, and from our budget, 85% goes to facilities as opposed to 15% that goes to social services. So I'm kind of wondering if we know more about how to prioritize the facilities?
That's an excellent question, and I'll go back to public social services. These facilities, these agencies, the facilities that they have or they house have public social services in them. So what you would do is look at the public social services rankings to see what's most important and what are they doing in their facility. So if you want to make an improvement on a facility, you look at the public social services offerings that they have, if that makes sense. So they kind of go hand in hand.
Well, library is number 2. And I was trying to, I'm not opposed to libraries, but I'm trying to see, being number 2 priority, how it fits. And when people were responding to the survey, what were they thinking about what's needed in libraries? More libraries, longer hours, better libraries, and how it fits into this? Because, again, it's number 2 out of 7.
Right. So when we look at libraries, and again, I can't interpret what people are thinking when they're taking a survey. So if I'm going to assume that they understand that community facility improvement means basically upgrading a library rather than what services are offered within the library, maybe the library that they're closest to or live nearby needs updating, for instance. But it could also mean, and again, as a respondent, I wouldn't know, it could also mean that they want more after-school activities at the library. It could be a number of things, honestly. It's just the psychology of the respondent. And that's another part we learned. Ms. Alexanian, if you'd like to.
I think you did a good job, Maggie, but I just wanted to add, this was our first year putting together a survey ourselves. We usually do this as part of the con plan, which is the larger 5-year plan. So it was really difficult for us as staff to try to word the questions where we would be able to understand from the residents what was most important. So we try to do our best to take the priorities from the con plan and try to hone in on what part of each of this is most important. And you do have a good point, Committee Member Manoukian, that does this mean that they would like us to spend more CDBG money on building more libraries, or does it mean library improvements? And all of the questions were worded where it's what's important to you as a resident, even the social services. And so when we were trying to gauge what's important to the individual and then collectively bring that in and say, if majority of Glendale, which it wasn't majority because only 279 people responded, but if majority of Glendale wanted to see, more libraries or more parks or more neighborhood improvements because, the roads and the infrastructure in Glendale needed to be improved, then it gives you as a decision maker and council more of a better idea of how to prioritize those projects. So the intent was to try to kind of show the amount of money that we have allocated to capital improvement. You're right, it is a larger portion of the entire CDBG funding. But as you could tell, city projects, specifically for city, like pre-designating for city projects, it's only a small percentage. And so that could kind of guide you in making a decision, should the amount be prioritized for parks? And it looks like, outdoor parks and recreation facilities, at least from those who have voiced their opinion, does seem to still be at the top. So when you're looking at it as, I only have a limited amount of money, what do I fund? You are still doing the right thing by funding parks. If parks was, let's say, number 7 on the list, then this would tell you, okay, priorities have changed. Maybe we don't need to pre-designate money for parks. And as it relates to community agencies, I think what Maggie suggested is what staff was thinking, that the committee would use the priorities as far as if social services, if you want to go back a slide, Maggie, if social services, the way that the community finds all of these various programs of importance, mental health and senior services and youth services are the top 3. So when you're getting applications for or proposals for capital improvement funding, maybe you look at those who are trying to improve their mental health facilities as a higher priority than something else, or one that would provide an increased service because they're building a new facility that would be able to allow them to provide additional services within those categories. So at this point, this is kind of what the response was, and based on the number of people who responded, whether it was at the meetings or through the survey, staff felt that the survey results were the most compared to those in attendance. And I think you were at one of the meetings, and the virtual meeting, again, there was a limited number of people who were in attendance. So staff used the survey ranking as the way to summarize what we at least heard from the limited number of residents who responded on what was of most importance to them. Could the survey be done differently? Absolutely, and this is kind of where we've done it this year, so we'll take any feedback that you have that we could change or improve to get additional information to be able to better understand from the community. There's so many subcategories we could go into, and even though originally we didn't have the subcategories, we just had the higher level programs. And in talking with staff, we thought, well, okay, so if somebody says senior services, well, how do we know what in senior services was most important to them? So why don't we try to do subcategories to at least try to pull that from the respondents? It's one thing when they're in person, because you could ask them, but it's another when they're taking a survey. So that was kind of our goal, and I'm not sure if I feel like we were at least successful in the 279 people who responded, but would it have been great to get a couple thousand responses? Absolutely. But I think we were actually shocked to have received so many survey responses. And it took us a good couple of weeks to pull this together and make sure it's available in multiple languages. And thank you to Iris and Maggie and working tirelessly to try to get this out with at least 2 weeks for the community to respond. But I think this was kind of a good start for us to know how to improve next year, and we'll definitely take back any feedback that you have to try to help improve the survey and also include categories. For future years, I think if we continue to do the survey as an option, I think we would bring you the questions in advance and have the committee vet through the questions and then be able to put it out afterwards. So it'll give us a little bit more time to be able to do that. So that was kind of, from staff's perspective, that was kind of the goal and why we chose the survey ranking to be what we looked at in prioritizing, because the people in attendance, it's so hard to gauge what each one thinks because everybody thinks something different. And it's really difficult to try to individually have them give that feedback and then be able to summarize it. And plus, the combination of responses in person and virtual still didn't outnumber the survey results. So that was kind of where why staff chose to go with the survey results.
Well, I commend you. It's a wonderful project, and the way you've presented is very understandable. My feedback would be, in terms of the community facilities question, to go at least one layer deeper, just to understand what it is that they want. Maybe it's the quality, or it's the quantity, at least. That maybe that kind of a question. But thank you for this, because I think it's, at least for me as a new committee member, it's very helpful.
One question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Go ahead.
I would definitely, first of all, thank you for doing this, because I think this is the way we will really get insights. As you saw, it's hard to get people together in community meetings, but if you do a survey, you start to get more input. Couple suggestions is, as we build upon this year over year, it's important not to do completely change the survey so that you can see some trending data with some common questions, but then you can build upon it in terms of digging deeper in certain areas that seem to be helpful. And look for ways to continue to expand the audience for it. I would love to see a time when we get to like 1,000 or 2,000, respondents, and I think we can with the proper kind of publicity plan around it. One question I had here is, so for example, on libraries, some of these things are city facilities at the end of the day. So libraries, for us to do anything there, unless there's going to be a public-private partnership with a community organization that does something in terms of social services inside a library, really you would be looking at the city's library administration and team coming to the table and saying, here's a program we can put on, or here's an improvement we can do to a facility. In my history with CDBG, I don't think we've had libraries pursue any sort of funding. So that'll be an interesting thing to maybe discuss with them. Neighborhood improvements, if dating back, neighborhood services used to get some money for code enforcement, if you remember. The presumption of that was to improve the quality of the neighborhood. But we made a strong argument at that time as a committee not to have those sorts of things funded through CDBG funds, because that is really, at the end of the day, the obligation of neighborhood services in the city in terms of general quality of life in neighborhoods. And so trying to get a little bit of money that would be otherwise go to nonprofit groups to just fund, let's say, one code enforcement officer was not a good use of CDBG money, is what we had concluded back then. We could always change, I presume, our position, but I personally was not in favor of us trying to fund things that are common obligations of a city government to provide services to their citizens. Libraries kind of fall there too, because how much money could we give to a library to really do a major improvement? I think that is really something that should work its way through the normal city budgeting process for all the different departments that exist. So I appreciate this insight. All I'm getting at is when the time comes, you know, those are the types of decisions we may need to make where we say, okay, library's great idea, it's a need, but we don't have enough money to actually make a measurable difference in the quality of a library at the end of the day, unless it's going to be something unique and creative, which might come out of some sort of public-private partnership, you know, in an area for a library that happens to serve the demographic that we're, you know, trying to, you know, the underserved parts of Glendale. So those are the types of things I think we'll have to consider as we look at this feedback. Because at the end of the day, this is feedback, right, for us to consider as we get proposals.
One quick question, suggestion. I don't know if it's doable. I know it's a lot of work especially for the survey. You know, you guys went through good, a quick turnaround and, you know, good survey out completely. And I was wondering if it's possibly, instead of now, we have somewhat an experience of how to put the survey together and what timeline and what it will take to do it. I'm thinking maybe we could do 2 surveys, one at the end of the year and one at the beginning or the mid-year, so that maybe we'll see a trend maybe, or maybe changed by the weather. If the weather gets better, people are thinking a different thing. And when it comes to the winter, they may think something different that's more suitable for them. And that might get them to used to answering surveys and getting more involved. With that, you know, would probably be a better results or a higher participation. And if the council, of course, if we can have the council or announce it at the council meetings, that might be something that people who listen to council meetings, renters or not, that might be, I think our concern is more for the renters to participate than the homeowners. So I think that would be something maybe to think about if there is a direction or possibility of doing it. Thank you.
So, yeah, the survey is great, actually. I love it, and I'm into surveys in general. So thank you for what you guys done, and obviously my number one hope would be to get as many, what is, not me, somebody,
Agliasato, Lizette is currently unavailable.
whose phone is it?
Please leave a message after the tone. When you have finished, please hang up or press the pound key for more options.
So, yeah, it'd be great if we get to that 1,000 point or 2,000 point, and I think mainly not necessarily to have, I think more detail would go. For example, I'm looking at 44% are parent guardian of children under 18. So if you have 44% of the surveys, almost half of it, they have younger kids. Obviously, that changes the priorities that they will be more concerned of. So So if you have 44% have younger kids, obviously parks, libraries, things that would attract more kids and children. So we don't know their age. That's why I know it was your first one. Granted, it's a starting point and it's a test. I think the age will make a difference also for us to know the priorities as well. Because if somebody's, again, if I say 15% answered none of the above, that automatically takes a big chunk of it away. So if we have more people surveying, I think it'll give us more direction versus if 50% they have kids, their priority may be not as much senior centers, for example, because they have nothing to do with seniors. But yet I have another one that it says, I didn't, which was it? That caretakers, almost 22%. So obviously they're dealing with seniors. So I think having more people in the service somehow, I know it's very challenging, but maybe started earlier or something like that, that would probably change the priorities and give us more direction. If 10% are, for example, in their 20s or college students or versus 50, 60%. So I think the key to have more detailed, successful numbers is in mass of the survey. If we have 1,000 or even 2,000, whatever that is. So other than that, everything else, obviously, it'll take time to adjust itself. It's a great survey. I'm very excited about it. It'll give us direction. But the more, the better, obviously. Yes, Mr.
Just a quick comment and an offer. I deal with a lot of opinion research firms in my business. Happy to hook you up with someone who can voluntarily just provide you some feedback on the survey in terms of how to improve it or kind of help you think through the results of it, just to give you some guidance for the next one. Because there's a lot of firms like that out there, but we deal with them all the time in my business, so happy to kind of get a free consultation if that's helpful to the team.
Absolutely. We're happy to take feedback. And like I mentioned in the past, we've done this once with the consultant through ConPlan. I mean, we've done surveys before, but not at this extent. So we're happy to take any feedback and incorporate it. And one more thing I wanted to add, with all of the questions, I think we left an other box, and I just wanted to say that one of the things that came up that was most popular was housing. That wasn't included in the survey as one of the options to prioritize. So of the other respondents, housing was one of the most voiced additional program priority that was not already on the survey. So although housing has its own set of funds, federal funds, and they do, the housing department does spend their funds to prioritize the needs of the community. But as part of the larger annual plan and the feedback we received, I also wanted to make that note that housing was coming back as one of the program priorities to include for future years. So we'll be sure to add that as one of the priorities and see how it ranks in comparison to others. So that was the other one.
I assume low-income housing we're talking. When we say housing, we mean low-income housing versus...
Majority was, yes, rent, assistance with rent and assistance with housing and low-income housing, of course, yes. That was one of, and it varied because everybody's feedback is inputted differently since it's a free type box.
Right.
But I think just pulling out the common theme from all of the comments that were coming in, a good chunk of it was housing.
I read some of the emails. It's very interesting the way they wrote it. It's great, actually. Very, very interesting detail.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
No,
Okay.
if there's no other additional comments on the part of the committee, I guess one of the questions we'd like to ask in the motion that is before you is to approve the program priorities and then just confirm that you would like for us to put these program priorities in as the order of priority for the agencies who will be applying for funding are to consider, or if you'd like to keep this just as a tool for you to be aware of, but not necessarily put it into the RFP. So the motion before you is to approve the program priorities as staff found from the survey. But again, it's up to the committee whether you would like to do that and make it as part of the RFP or if you'd like to direct staff otherwise. So
Do you want to narrow down more options for us instead of getting into the debate? What other, I mean, if we don't, can we rearrange it, or shall we say they just leave it open as they apply to pick the priorities?
Chair Arabian, I think it's up to the committee how you want to prioritize it, meaning how the committee wants to show the agencies who will be applying what your priorities are as a board. Now, whether you want to change that from what the community said, as staff, I leave that decision up to you. Whether you agree with the community or you just from your personal experience or from the community that may have reached out to you guys individually as a board and made additional comments, I leave that up to you. But staff's recommendation would be to use the survey results. If we were going to rank the priorities, was to use the survey results, because that's what we heard from the community. But that's totally up to the board, whatever the majority of the board would like to do. You, like I said, you don't have to include it as part of the RFP if you don't want to, but you could use it as a tool for your decision-making down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Armini.
I'd honestly, this is just my personal opinion, would rather it be positioned as guidance to us, because I worry, going back to my previous comment, that if we say these are the program priorities, next thing you know, there's multiple things in here, like I said, outdoor parks and recreation facilities, the majority are city-run, libraries, city-run, neighborhood improvements, chances are it's a public works kind of thing, or code enforcement, things like that, neighborhood services. These are all city-run things, and really the objectives of these funds are for our community organizations who can make a difference in these areas, and those are 3 areas where it's harder to make a difference with limited amount of funds. So I wouldn't want to say these are the program priorities. Next thing you know, libraries comes back to us with a $500,000, $1 million program. We're not going to be able to fund that, or if we do, it's going to be at the expense of community organizations. So my personal preference is to position our RFP such that it is oriented toward community organizations. I know we have some projects, and we're going to talk about one in a little bit about, Pacific Park and things like that. We did say we want to fund parks. That's not what, I'm not saying we don't. But if we get all different city services having to come to us for money, we're not going to be able to fund major things. So that's where I worry a little bit about if we were to pass a motion that says, these are our program priorities, then we put out an RFP saying that, then organizations are going to look back and say, well, how can I, as a nonprofit, do anything with outdoor parks or libraries or neighborhood improvements? It becomes a little bit harder. The Youth Alliance, Glendale Youth Alliance, obviously it's a little bit about neighborhood improvement, right, in terms of the workforce program that we've supported in the past. But it's just, I hesitate to say these are the program priorities, like definitively.
Chair Arabian, committee members, is it specific, or committee member Armenian, is it specific to the capital facility, community facility improvement category? You do have a good point, because majority of the ranking, the programs that were ranked under community facility improvements are probably more city funded type projects. I think from staff's perspective, it was the community CIP projects could be ranked with the program priorities as well. So I leave it up to you. You do have a good point, but I from the city's perspective, I don't think we would come to you with all of these different CIP projects. I think this kind of assures us that parks being the pre-designated project type that the committee has identified as probably still the highest of the city projects that we have from the community's perspective. But for the community capital improvement projects, it would probably be more of the social service programs that you would look at. And you could also choose to include the social service program priorities, but not the capital improvement programs priorities. Again, that's a really good point. But from our perspective, I think the community facility improvements just assures us that the pre-designated funding, which has been for parks, is probably still at the highest of priority to the community. So that was more of that question for us. For all the community capital improvements, it would probably still be based off of the social service programs that they offer, because they're not going to go build a library or build a new park for the city. So
Yeah, I'm less worried about the social services ranking because those are generally kind of all the areas that we have typically seen applications, RFP proposals from. But we also have less money in social services. We have more money in CIP, so in capital. So I just would want to be clear on the capital, you know, kind of a little bit more directional in terms of what we expect. Because like what we're doing with YMCA is an example, or what we've done with YWCA, you know, falls into a couple of these categories on CIP, right? But you don't have a ton of organizations with those sorts of facilities. You have a handful. The rest are all city-run facilities. So again, at some point, we might run out of things to do to improve those things because we've been putting substantial amounts of money in it. And when you say my number one or my number two, let's say, is libraries, it's a little bit misleading in terms of what we're really here to do on the capital side.
I think the question is in two parts. I think one is, do we approve the priorities? Two is, do we want to publish the priorities? And on the number one, my question is, are we required, because I'm new, are we required to approve this as our priorities or take it as a recommendation?
If we can, Chair Greeby and members of the CDBG Advisory Committee, I think it's more the rankings that you're concerned with, and I think that's really where it's coming from. The concern is coming from ranking. You don't necessarily have to rank. We can approve the program priorities and then add into the RFP, in general, what the priorities are in no order of rank. And that way, that'll give the committee more leeway to make decisions in March and then continue to use the rankings as a tool, as Ms. Alexanian had mentioned. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's where I was gonna go with. So my main concern was the ranking as well, not the program itself, but the ranking of it. I was gonna speak after everyone was done. Ranking for me, it's becoming an issue, as Mr. Armenian mentioned. And it could be misleading, not that it's an issue in that aspect, but we don't want it to be misleading for somebody to say, oh, I'm seventh on ranking, maybe I shouldn't even apply. It could go totally opposite direction too. So I don't think we should give that direction to them for them to know what rank they're in. So it'd be more comfortable for them to apply and have more confidence in the system. That's where I'm going with this. But your suggestion was, you know, something that we can.
I think I was trying to understand the concern that the committee had with the ranking system.
I don't know, I'm sorry, but I should say, that was my understanding. I don't know if my committee members agree to that or not.
I think my question is, must we approve program priorities? Just as a
Yes,
basic question.
we need to reaffirm the program priorities to include program priorities in the RFP, so the community agencies are aware of the services they provide. That way, when they submit their proposals, they include that in, because that is one of the questions in the proposal, which is what is your program priority and how does that fit in with Glendale, what Glendale wants and needs.
And then but we do also have the option of either taking away the rankings or moving the rankings. Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say moving the rankings. I would say just generalizing it like in previous years where they're all there for you, and then.
But I think the question is, can we just decide these are the 4 things that we would like the RFP to focus on? I mean, we want to provide some guidance in the RFP, because otherwise you're going to make a lot of people do a lot of work, and then we may not go in that direction. So you want to narrow it down so that the applying organizations either know how to orient their programs or maybe even make a decision on whether or not to apply. This is why the library thing sticks out to me and why I keep using it as an example. I wouldn't want library department staff to go and spend a bunch of time applying if, you know, like, we're not going to be able to fund $1 million renovation of Casa Verdugo Library, for example. But we may encourage, that's a CIP program, like libraries isn't specifically mentioned under social services, right?
Right.
But someone could come up with something within any of these categories.
Committee Member Armenian, I know that libraries is sort of the one that stands out to the committee. I can give you a little bit of information on that, just for instance, for this year, as an example. We're meeting with a community agency. They're actually considering applying for capital improvement project funding for this coming year. And they share library parking space with Glendale Library. They're next door. So they're a community agency that share a parking spot. They want to resurface their parking space to allow better parking for themselves and the patrons of the library. That could be an example of kind of a partnership like you had mentioned, although it's public-public in the sense. So that could be something to look at as a rank. When you're looking at ranking, you can look at that particular proposal and think, okay, well, this also benefits the library because it's helping the library patrons park and get into the library quicker than they would having to drive around and try finding parking for them and their children.
But I think what Committee Member Armenian is saying is, from the 7 facilities ranked, can we take 4 or 5 of them and drop 2 of them from the list, even though they were surveyed upon?
Okay. Well, I think I brought it back to the program priority determinations. Because we have a 5-year consolidated plan, all of these priorities are in there. So they're already in there. We just wanted to rank the priorities in order of importance to the public, so that way the committee is aware of what the public wants and the council will be aware of what the public wants. So to answer your question, no, we cannot remove them. We have to keep them in there because they're there until 2025.
So the only option we have then is to remove the ranking system and just include them
Well,
as a group.
in addition, I assume when it comes time to RFP language, we will be reviewing that language, and we have an opportunity to massage the language with an additional focus.
So I think, Chair Hariba, members of the committee, I think what, if I may, I think what I'm understanding is you do want to include the program priorities, you just don't want to rank them in any order. So in previous program priorities, library was one of the items. Like last year when we presented it under community facilities, we did have outdoor parks and rec, indoor community centers, senior centers, libraries, and homeless day centers. So they were all under that category. We could easily just leave it again as under for the way that they're ranked, not necessarily put priority to any of them, and just say these are the types of projects to be considered, but not necessarily say that this is number 1 or this is number 2 as it specifies. So if you would like to keep it generic or general, we could easily do that and not necessarily rank them in any given order, which is what Ms. Kavarian was suggesting. Now, whether you want to do that for both social services and CIP, or you want to do that with one, up to you. We could, again, take away all the ranking, and you use the ranking from the survey as just a guidance, a tool for you to make decisions should the proposals come in, but not limited to those. Now, I'd like to also state, just for the viewing public and the agencies, that just because an item is of highest priority doesn't necessarily mean that that should be weighed higher in your evaluation process, especially if the proposal isn't as strong compared to another agency. So that's the other thing too, is it shouldn't be limiting. It's just a guidance tool for the agencies to also be aware that these are the areas that were of importance to the community, to the committee, and to council. But that shouldn't mean that if you've got, similar proposals for, let's say, a category that serves number 1, like mental health, but a senior services program proposal is stronger in the number of people it serves or the impact it has on the community. Just because mental health was most important through this survey, from what we heard from these 297 residents, doesn't necessarily mean that that specific proposal should be given more weight or more of a priority in funding. So I also want to make that clear to the agencies that might be viewing this, that these are just guidance, and what, you know, you as a committee decide today is kind of what you're going to look at and the guidance you want to provide them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that an agency that might be fourth in priority will not get funded, because if they do have a really strong program that serves a lot of people and will make a greater impact, then the committee and council might find that that should be of higher priority than, let's say, the 2 or 3 people that this other proposal might be serving. So they're not this isn't intended to limit that type of decision making. It's just more of, what does your community find of importance, at least the community that took the time to respond. So I do understand that it is limited. You know, we do have close to 200 residents in Glendale. So, you know, 279 shouldn't determine what is of most priority, because I know you as a body do hear from the residents, and so do we. But this was just kind of what, if you wanted to prioritize, this was kind of staff's recommendation, because it was the most number of responses we received. But in no way should that limit what you do. So you're welcome to take away the priorities and just leave them as, these are generally the program priorities and the type of programs that we will look to fund, but not in any particular order.
Thank you for the disclaimer. That's exactly where I was going to, not to mislead them, but obviously now you put it in public, but I don't know how many people are watching us or listening to us. But nevertheless, taking that away so it won't be misleading. Obviously, when the day comes, we're not going to take the orders. And also because it's the first year of survey and it's only 279, maybe we can pick this as just a direction. Hopefully, the following years we'll have more individual surveying with their, so it will determine exactly what the orders could be down the road in future. Mr. Avedisian, go ahead.
I think some of it is actually answered, but I was thinking, since of course the survey doesn't really justify the community, it doesn't show really the true picture of the community, what it is. I think we should just keep the survey for at least for this year, this turnaround, keep the survey as just a guideline or a direction for us in the staff, and not include it on the packet, because that might might give them, regardless how we explain it, they might still give them a wrong impression and wrong direction. Like I remember years back that we had give them priorities, or we were looking into like homelessness programs that it relates to, or the properties that buildings that needed some work that related to homelessness, that it was anything that they were doing with their program. So maybe that kind of a guideline if we put out, or direction we put out. And then additional thing that I was thinking, outside of this, maybe we should add a survey and ask our community organizations that they are getting funding from us, that whoever they are serving, maybe they can get a survey as what they need. So if we compile all of those surveys of the actual people that are getting the service, and then what the community says, maybe that will be a better guideline for us that, okay, what's the true picture of what the people want, the ones that are getting served or not. Thank
Committee
you.
Member Avedisian, you make a good point. When we start working on our 5-year consolidated plan, that's exactly what we do. We host meetings, we release surveys, because it's so consolidated and we know it's going to be the next 5 years. We have to make sure and ensure that every no stone is left unturned, as they say. So we do provide that survey not only to the residents, but we do invite community agencies to, at the time, before COVID, to meetings, and they would give us their input, and their clientele would attend. So yes, we have done that in the past, and we continue to do that, especially with the consolidated plan. To do that annually, that might be very time-consuming. And
Just to add to what you said, Ms. Kavarian, we did send the survey out to community agencies, and we did ask them to send it to their clients. So we're hopeful that those that are interested still had the opportunity. So this survey was also provided to community agencies and asked them to submit it to their clientele so they could share. So some of the 279 might be, but whether they took the time and or they sent it out to their clientele, we can't be sure. But we definitely did send it out to the agencies and asked them for their assistance to get it out to their clients as well. So I think, again, we can't not publish the priorities in the packets. We do have to show that these are generally the types of programs that are going to be funded, because we do, as part of the application, ask the agencies to identify which one of the program priorities their proposed program will meet. We just don't have to prioritize them in any specific order. So we do have to publish something.
Thank you.
Chair? I think it's, from everything that I understand from my co-committee members, I think we should just, I'll make a motion, let's put it this way. I'll make a motion to keep the items in the, just take the priority line numbers out and just keep them as a general comment, or however you see it fit, and move forward. That's a motion.
So let me just rephrase it. So we keep the priorities that we have had. We're just gonna take away the ranking of it,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Anyone wants to second?
I'll second.
Mr. Arcidi?
I'll second.
And just to be sure, the program priorities as they were presented today, correct?
Right.
Yes.
And we'll be sure to shuffle them so that they're not in this particular order, just to take away all numbering and ranking. So, but the programs as they were presented today, you are comfortable with.
Yeah, I think instead of numbers, we can have just points next to them.
Yeah.
We won't number them.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Avedisian,
Yes.
Anukian,
Yes.
Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian is absent, Chair Garibian.
Yes.
Carries.
Next
Item-
item.
Next is item 4D, City of Glendale amended citizen participation plan for the CDBG, ESG, and home programs. At one is motion to approve final amended City of Glendale citizen participation plan for CDBG, ESG, and home programs.
Chair Garibian, members of the advisory committee, at our last meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee, we presented the amended citizen participation plan that requested committee feedback. We have a PowerPoint ready for you. Just as we're going to revisit it real quickly, we'd like you to approve the final amended citizen participation plan for the CDBG, ESG, and home program. As a refresher, the plan is a requirement designed to encourage participation of low and moderate income persons in the areas where HUD funds are proposed to be used to take appropriate action. And then sections of the plan include performance reporting and conducting public hearings, meetings, availability to the public, access to records, technical assistance, and filing of complaints. As we had presented at the last meeting, we had an amendment to the citizen participation plan. This was actually an addition that HUD made us put in case of disaster emergency. This is mainly to have virtual meetings during the pandemic. So that language helped us use online platforms in addition to the in-person meetings that we conduct today. And then also at the August 29th meeting, the committee reviewed the plan, and then you also provided feedback. And these are minor updates that we included. We updated program names, city and HUD staff names, addresses, emails. It was basically a plan cleanup and an update. But we did add one additional component. We updated language in the plan, and I think that was a directive from committee member Armenian. We updated the language in the plan so not to name specific newspaper publications, to broaden the scope of publications used to advertise and allow for a wider communication reach. So we did include that in the new plan. So per HUD guidelines, we have to post this amended plan on the city's website. We have done so, and then the public notice was sent out notifying residents for a 10-day public comment period. The review was from September 7th through September 19th, and we received no comments. So we come to you today to ask you to review and approve the final amended citizen participation plan for the 3 programs.
Got a question, Chair.
So
Thank you for the report again. Quick question. I know we've been trying, I mean, you guys, the staff has been trying so many ways and trying everything possible that we're thinking that we can get more participation in all those programs. Something that just came to my mind. I don't know, of course, it's a budgeting issue also, will be a budgeting issue. What if we use some of our local TV channel? I know Channel 6, we're using it. That's, they're putting out the information. But using the more, our local TVs, say Armenian TVs or whatnot programs, that directly goes to the homes of the people and the listeners, and that may generate some kind of an interest that people might want to participate and voice their opinion, what it is. Because a lot of them, they may not even understand. Once they get the flyer in their hand, they may not even realize what it means for them individually. You know, they say, oh, another trash maybe. You know, sorry to say that, but that's, it can very much happen in the marketing life. You know, it does happen. So if there is a way of maybe looking into it, and of course that's a budgeting financial cost thing, but then maybe we can use like our past council members program, whatnot, just to bring in more people. My concern is just to have many ways and any ways possible to bring more participation, because that would be really giving us the true picture of all that work that is being done. Thank you.
Committee Member Garibian, members of the committee, Committee Member Arvidisian, you bring up a good point. Our budget is about $340,000. That's what we're estimating. And honestly, we have about $3,000 in the budget for advertising, and just our postcards alone covered that. And I think through the postcards, we had one attendee for postcard mailer that we did. We would have to look at budgets outside of CDBG, and that would be probably more of a question for Mr. Bulanikian and Ms. Alexanian. But when we advertise with our former council member, whomever, we'd have to make sure to advertise in English, Armenian, and Spanish. So we'd have to at least provide 3 outlets, and which costs additional funds. So that being said, I think it would be a budgetary concern, and I'm not familiar with the cost of on-air type advertising in today's market. So that would, again, we'd have to look into it and see what the costs would be and do an analysis if it's feasible.
Yeah, that was a suggestion for me, you know, of course, all languages. I wouldn't want one or the other, for sure.
The 3,000, is that for the fiscal year, or what is it?
It's our fiscal year budget, so we have $340,000 total, which includes staff salaries and auditing and you know, supplies, maintenance, all of that. And part of the advertising is $3,000. That $3,000 is already spent down just from our the mailers that we sent out for this particular community meeting season.
One more?
The reason I was saying, because if I'm not mistaken, there is least access programs that the local cable company has to provide to the locals to advertise within the locals, because most of them are nationwide. I did spoke to Spectrum a year ago, 2 years ago. They do have that on more of a budget level that they offer, and goes on to, I don't know, like 20 different channels, HGTV and TNT and so on and so forth. Maybe you guys can talk to Spectrum. I think they have such program that they have to allocate to the local viewers, not just the nationwide big boys, you know, all that. But okay.
That's something that actually I know about that. They do have it, and they're supposed to, by, I guess, the law or contract, they're supposed to provide it. But if none of the organizations or public doesn't know about it, they don't use it. They'll maybe use it in some other ways. And that may be, I don't know, Mr. Bolinkian, then we may have to go to the city council and ask for an additional budget. If that is the case, I think, I don't know. if that is the way of going to getting like $3,000, honestly, especially today, that's one mailer, and that is and that's not even 10,000 mailers. I don't think that mailer will even cover that 3,000
Or
for that many.
revise the budget if we can.
Chair Garibian, members of the committee, we will submit a service level increase during the next budget cycle to ask for some additional funds for advertising for the CDBG program. So we'll work with Maggie to get some quotes on different news outlets, let it be Spanish, Armenian, as well as English, and we'll submit a service level increase.
Thank you.
Is there an email database or text possibilities? I mean, and how much does that cost?
Chair Garibian, members of the committee member Manukian, we do have an email database. So from where our newsletter goes, anybody that's interested in receiving information or mailers from us, they have to opt in. So we can't just randomly send it to all residents. We do have that email, and Iris, I don't know if off the top of your head, if you know how many people we have on our mailer for our department now, but we could look at that. A couple thousand at this point. I'm thinking maybe 2,000.
Closer to 3.
3,000?
About 2,700.
Okay. So those are the individuals who have signed up to receive emails from our department specifically, and that's like our newsletter that goes out. And these types of community meetings and the survey are always sent out to those individuals.
And is that going to be part of the, because I'm looking at page 13, the public notification of public hearings, I don't see an email going out as part of the plan. Am I incorrect?
I'd like to remind the committee, remember, this is just the minimal. We only put the minimum of what we do. We do a lot more than this. We do the emails, the newsletters. As a matter of fact, Ms. Alexanian and I worked with our housing division. They have their own email list through Community Development Department. We actually sent the survey out to them as well. So that email list also received the surveys and the community information meetings. So we go above and beyond just the basics here. We try to do as much as possible to get the word out. Nextdoor was another suggestion. We had done that. So even though that it's not in here, we are doing it.
And it doesn't require any expenditure, or it's minimal?
Not the emails.
Not the
no.
emails.
I mean, I would propose, for the email to be one of the main sources of information for the public, because newspapers or TV stations, people get their news by going to the site of whatever news publication they prefer. People don't sit around and just have the news run.
True.
For them to watch advertisements. And I think that in terms of the expenditure involved in email communication versus TV and print newspaper news publications,
Yeah.
you get more bang for your buck, as they say.
Going back to the survey results, we did notice that the preference of the 279 respondents was email.
Yeah.
We actually put into one of the questions on the survey whether they wanted to see city text, because we don't offer that now currently, but we wanted to see if that was an option that they wanted, because I believe LA County offers that. And that didn't seem to be as popular as the emails and the social media. So we're noticing that that is what the preference is.
Yeah, I believe more than like 50% or 55% had preferred email notifications, so I would highly encourage that.
And
Just a quick suggestion. If you're going to spend any sort of advertising dollars, I think the most cost-effective and most targeted way to do it is through Facebook and Instagram advertising. You can geographically target it, and it's very affordable compared to other forms of media, and you're going to get a lot more frequency. You're going to get people can click on something and take the survey on the spot, or whatever it is you're trying to have them do. You can link to other things through that sort of medium. Just suggestion.
Especially narrowing it down by age groups, because
Yeah,
it is for
you can target by
citizens in
age
the
group,
area.
you can target it by geography, you can do it multilingual. I mean, it's just, and it's significantly more affordable than trying to do a TV ad or anything else.
I agree.
Okay. Anyone else? Nothing? Do we have to approve this? Anyone?
Yeah.
wants to-
Motion to review.
I'll make a motion to approve the final amended City of Glendale Citizen Participation Plan for CDBG, ESG, and home programs.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Okay, committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Avedisian,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian is absent. Chair Garibian.
Yes. What's next?
Next is 4E, fiscal year 2023-2024, CDBG Public Social Services Request for Funding Proposal, RFP, packet. And that one is a motion to approve the fiscal year 2023-2024 CDBG Public Social Services Request for Proposal, RFP packet.
Thank you, Iris. Chair Garubian, members of the advisory committee, 4G is the social services packet, and then I believe is F, right? 4F is the capital improvement packet. I'm wondering if we could approve both of them together. Are we allowed to do that? Or, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the recommendations made from the program priorities and exclude those exhibits in ranking order as the committee had recommended? Or should we just do it one at a time?
We can do them together if the committee doesn't have any questions, but Iris will just need to read them both into, and it's 4E and 4F.
Sorry, 4E and 4F.
Yeah, we're okay if we do.
Okay, so 4F is fiscal year 2023-2024 CDBG Capital Improvement Project Request for Proposal, RFP packet. Now, one is a motion to approve the fiscal year 2023-2024 CDBG Capital Improvement Project Request for Proposal, RFP packet.
Committee members, the way we had compiled the packet information for both public social services and CIP was to attach the final program priorities once the committee approved them. Now that we know that you want them approved unranked, but just general, we're going to include them in Exhibit E of the Public Social Services packet and Exhibit D of the Capital Improvement packet. That's really the only update we have. Otherwise, it's the same as last year, the packet information. Any questions on either the public
For
social?
both of them,
for
it's the
both of
same
them.
application, except you're just gonna put the. and we
Exactly. So
take the
there's no
ranking.
ranking involved. We'll just include the general program priorities for 23-24. One is Exhibit E, which is Public Social Services, and Exhibit D is Capital Improvement.
Have you guys had any feedback from the agencies in regards to the application?
We have not, Chair Garubian, because they always have at least 2 to 3 program priorities kind of checked off the agencies that we serve. We've never really had an agency who didn't have a program priority that was met through what they do.
I don't mean about the priorities, just in general, the application itself and all that.
We have not. We have not.
Shall we ask them?
Committee member, Chair Haribi and committee members, we're happy to get feedback. So if anyone has voiced any concerns to any of the committee members, we urge them to also talk to us because we do want to make sure that the application packet is clear, concise, and makes sense. So if there's any feedback, we'd love to hear from them. We're happy to ask. We could send out an email and ask if they do have any questions or concerns before we release this one. I think we have enough time to request some feedback before it's published, but they've always been welcome to approach staff, and no one has. That doesn't mean that there aren't concerns, but they have not voiced it. So we're happy to reach out to the agencies and ask for feedback, should there be any.
The reason I brought that up, because they have mentioned to me very loosely outside that for the application process in general, not specifically. So it won't be a bad idea if we put that out there. It'd be great, and it's every few years, it's good to have.
Sure.
some kind of a
Chair
feedback.
Caribbean, if there's anything specific they've brought up, if you want to mention it to us or provide direction to do differently, we're happy to consider that. But
Different people in different areas.
Okay.
So that's why I'd rather have a general one out there, so let them,
sure, we're happy to, Maggie will send out an email to all of the agencies and ask for any feedback on the process, the application packet and the process. Hopefully it won't be too much difference between now and the application going out, because you are approving the packet today. So if there's any significant change that might be necessary, we'd have to come back to you to reconsider whatever that feedback is, should staff want to
we can
make those
do it
changes.
for the following year. I mean, it
Or-
doesn't have
yeah,
to be for
absolutely.
this particular year, but
I
as long
was-
as we give that opportunity to them.
Absolutely, Chair Grebian. And then keeping in mind that most of these questions are HUD, HUD directed, so we have to have certain questions in there. And there are city directions as well. So I'm not sure what the questions might be or the updates or changes that they'd like to see, but we definitely will work with them. We do have a technical assistance meeting set up at the end of November. Then we will definitely bring that up if they want to see some changes, because we are going to be moving towards an online system. So we were going to ask them questions on that and how they'd like to see the online system set up.
No more
That's
papers,
good.
hopefully.
We're hoping,
We're
yes.
working on it.
That's good.
And you won't, oh, I'm sorry.
Quick
go
question,
ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to understand correctly. While we were talking about changes or any suggestions coming back from the agencies, we're not talking about the process of the application. We're talking about what's in it, what's the information required from them giving us back, correct? It's not the process that what city already does to go through once we got the application in, correct?
No, not the process, just the
Just
application.
the information in the application or asks in
More
the
like the
application?
applying portion of it.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone wants to?
I'll make the motion to approve it as presented
For E and F?
for E and for G.
No,
No,
Correct.
F,
E and F.
And F, I'm sorry, E and F.
can't skip.
That would be my fault. I didn't have my glasses.
When I was learning the alphabet, I skipped the F part.
Okay, anyone wants to second that?
A second.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Avedisian,
Yes,
Manukian,
Yes.
Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian is absent, Chair Garibian.
Yes,
Motion carries. Next is 4G, reprogramming of $1,090,000 returned from canceled city capital improvement Pacific artificial turf multipurpose field project from program years 2016 to 2017, 2018 through 2019, and 2019 to 2020. At one is a motion to reprogram $1,090,000 returned from canceled Pacific artificial turf multipurpose field projects from program years 2016 to 2017, 2018 to 2019, 2019 to 2020, to Pacific Natural Turf Project 2223.
Thank you, Iris. Chair Garibian, members of the committee, that's a mouthful because there are a couple program years that are involved. While Iris brings up the PowerPoint, we have before you a report requesting to reprogram money from a canceled artificial turf project at Pacific Park. If you recall, back in October of 2018, the committee approved transferring $740,000 from canceled homeless housing projects to Pacific Artificial Turf Multipurpose Field Project. And in October of 2019, the committee pre-designated $350,000 in park CIP funding for Pacific Park Multipurpose Field Project in fiscal year 1920. I know the project names are a little different because our financial system changed and our naming convention changed, but they're all for the same project. So we had a total of $1,090,000 allocated to an artificial turf project at Pacific Park from the Glendale Environmental Coalition to use what's considered an EPIC system for natural grass. Staff decided to do, and of course with council direction as well, staff decided to do a life cycle analysis to evaluate natural turf versus artificial turf for parks projects. As a result of that full report, it was, I'm pretty sure some of you may have followed it, and a full presentation was done to the Parks Commission and to City Council and feedback from the community. The City Council directed staff in June of this year to keep the Pacific Park baseball field as natural turf. They did not approve that project be artificial turf. Since the project could no longer be artificial turf, the project had to be canceled. Staff did talk to the HUD field office to try to confirm that a Pacific natural grass project would be eligible for CDBG funds, and the project scope would include excavating the existing grass and 8 inches of soil, installing a new drainage system, adding a new catch basin for water percolation, importing new balanced soil, installing a new irrigation system, complete laser grading, sod installation, installation of new bases, and a completion of the ball field layout. So essentially, we are switching the artificial turf project to a natural turf project, or natural grass project, I should say. So before you is a request to be able to cancel the $1,090,000 that we had allocated for the Pacific artificial turf project and to designate that funds to a natural grass project. The natural grass project is estimated to be about $1.2 million total cost, and if the cost comes in lower than anticipated, staff will come back to you to reconsider if we need to give some of the funding back. But as you could tell, it is estimated at $1.2 million, and we're only asking to reallocate $1,090,000. From the artificial turf projects, we had already spent down about $87,000 in CDBG funds, but because the project is being canceled, we have to return those funds to HUD. So staff are working in the background with our finance department to move the expenses to another project to be able to release those funds so we could pay back HUD. But that will still leave $1,090,000 in CDBG funds that we could reprogram to a new project. And before you is the request to reprogram the $1,090,000 that you had originally earmarked for a artificial turf project at Pacific Park to be for a natural grass project at Pacific Park. And the years that you're seeing, these are program years that HUD provides. And the next report that we present will kind of talk about these program years and when the funding needs to be spent down, but we needed to be specific so that one, you would know these are program funds from 3 different program years that are being reclassified to a Pacific natural turf grass project. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
I had a question. I think somewhat you started giving a answer or coming up. The timeline, again, issues with, especially from the 2016 budget year, and now we're talking about 22, 23, and would this project still be okay, the funding? Especially, I'm concerned about the 2016 year, comparing to the current year, of course. If that money still will be available, we still can use it in transferring. I know you have done homework on that before coming through, but just wanted for me to know and the public, I guess, to understand it better.
Of course. Chair Arabian, committee member of Edison, that's a great question. And that kind of takes us to the next report. But in order to not confuse the committee or the public or staff that may come after us if there's turnover, we wanted to take the report separately. To answer your question, yes, the funding from program years 2016 and 2017 are in jeopardy if we leave it with this project. So we will, with the next report, should the committee be comfortable reallocating, let's just look at it as a whole, $1,090,000 to the Pacific grass natural turf project, we're going to ask you in the next report to swap monies with another project so that we're able to spend down the funds in time. So in theory, you're allocating $1,090,000 to a Pacific natural grass field project. So in concept, that's what you're doing. But the funding is coming from 3 different program years, from which one, this 2016-2017 portion, which is approximately $370,000, is at jeopardy if it's not spent down by September of 2023, and I'll go into a little bit more detail with the next report. So with this report, essentially, we're asking whether you are comfortable funding $1,090,000 in Pacific natural grass project.
One question before we go, once more, if I may, sorry. Now, again, say we approve this, the $1,090,000, and we moving forward, and the program or project starts in the construction. But your timeline with the 2016, that is, ought to end, it comes to that point that, okay, the project is not finished, but it's in the process. Would that be a jeopardy? Would that cause an issue? Or once, while you're in the project, you're in the process of the completion, then that issue, the time issue won't be effective?
Committee Member Avedisian, as long as the funds are spent down, the portion that's from program year 2016-2017 by the September 2023 date, even if the project itself is not complete, it won't be at jeopardy. So as long as the funds are expended and we draw down, for lack of better words, from HUD, we would be safe. So the project doesn't have to be complete, but the expenditures that have happened need to have been reported to HUD and drawn down from HUD. So
Which is doable.
the other thing I wanted to offer is, Chair Arabian, if you'd like for me to make the second presentation and then you come back to this to make it easier, just so you're looking at both reports at the same time, I'm happy to make the second presentation and we could put this on hold and then come back and take a vote for both at the same time or individually. So if that would help the committee, we're happy to do that.
Anybody has questions so far on this?
I have questions, sorry. So am I understanding that the natural grass project cost is more than the turf was going to be? 1,090,000 compared to 1.2, right? Or-
Chair Arabian, Committee Member Manukian, the total project cost is not more because the artificial turf project was over $2 million. So the rest of the project cost was coming from other funding sources. So the portion that was CDBG funded remains the same, but the project cost overall, the artificial turf was over $2 million.
And the other sources, we don't know? For the natural grass, the report says the remaining costs will come from other sources. Do we know that?
At this time, we have not identified the source because we would need to go back to council to request additional funding. It being a natural turf project, the other funding source for the artificial turf project was development impact fees, which could only be used for new amenities or expanded use of an existing facility. So the artificial turf component of the prior project was eligible in that it would allow for longer playtime and more playtime, which would serve more residents in Glendale. With the natural turf project, development impact fees are not eligible, unfortunately, so the project would have to be general funded or grant funded. So at this time, we have not identified where the funding will come from.
I apologize. If you go to the next slide, slide 5. If you look at the June 28, 2022 date, the interesting part of that decision that the council made was that there was a stipulation that special attention be given to community need and overall maintenance of that field. So that being said, the city, if we go back to the city council, that was their directive to change Pacific Park from artificial to natural. So therefore, most likely, and we don't want to speak for the city council, but most likely, because of what their directive was, there would be funding sources elsewhere.
And one last question. The drawdown amount that you posted on the slide is
That's a typo.
10,000 different. Which
Yeah,
one is the correct one?
It's 97,000. I
all right.
noticed that too. It's a typo.
All right, that's it, thank you.
Any other
Oh,
question?
in the presentation.
Mr. Armenia?
So this, if we provide this funding, this is for the initial project, but there's other expense, ongoing expenses to something like this. I assume that's coming out of normal Parks and Rec budget to,
Yes, Chair Garby and members of the committee, that's basically going to be paid out of our park services budget. It's our maintenance budget. So a field of that size will cost about, depending on material, $100,000 to $150,000 a year to maintain. That means laser leveling it every couple of years, either seeding it, sodding it. With the new water percolation system, we hope that we maintain the field 1 to 2, about 1 month to 1 to 2 months a year, basically. So we will need to be shutting the field down probably 2 months a year compared to an artificial turf where the field doesn't get shut down.
and that's in addition to what it costs today. Those are new costs based upon the new configuration that you're gonna have with the field, right?
No, that's the exact cost, what it costs us today to maintain
Today,
that field.
okay.
Yeah, there
Okay.
won't be additional cost. The only additional cost would be materials and salaries.
Got it, okay. I mean, this issue has been substantially, quote-unquote, litigated, meaning it's been discussed upside and down a million times. I'll just express a little bit of disappointment in that CDBG is being asked to fund the cost of it, but we weren't party to the discussions or the debate when it was happening. And so, for future reference, if we're going to be asked to pay for something, I would like to be part of that because I have some points of view on it, but I won't express them today because the decision is done already, but yet the bill is being brought over here somehow. So that's just a kind of a reflection of the process improvement in the future, in my opinion. Because if Parks and Recs gets to weigh in on it, they're not the ones delivering funds, but CDBG is, but yet we're not being asked on whether or not artificial turf is good versus, natural turf, et cetera. So it's a little bit backwards in terms of how this is happening, although I understand how you're trying to piece things together. That's the only comment I had.
So just also recap of original, what we have in front of us. So the project is a new project now. I mean, technically speaking, it's going to be a new funding, CDBG. So the deadlines or the dates that we have in resets, is that correct? I mean, 2016 and 17 deadline dates will be reset and will be a new date because it's a new project? Or it goes back, it remains the same project? I mean, you know where the confusion is?
Chair Arabian, members of the committee, the expenditure deadline does not change, which is where the second report comes in. So we still need to, if you don't mind, I think it might help if we do the second report. Then that way we can answer all questions you may have related to the expenditure deadline as well, because the second report is essential, or the next report, I should say, is essentially based on if you approve this report. So maybe it's best we provide a report so that you can make an informed decision. Would that help?
I think so, Mr. Armenia.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify my last comment. I meant Parks and Recs Commission got to weigh in, right? That's where this thing played out, and then it went to City Council. We should have included CDBG committee since the funding was likely to have come from here. We had already funded it, right? The turf, artificial turf program. So we were already part of the process at that point, but somehow we didn't get included on the, when the debate was happening, because I think it would have helped to reflect additional points of view into the process and the debate, since a substantial amount of the money is coming from here.
Okay, so let's move to 4H now. I'm sorry, was somebody was going to say something?
Yeah, Chair Arabian, members of the committee, Commissioner, my apologies, Committee Member Armenian. That's, your comment is noted, but We did go to the Parks, we had a joint meeting with the Parks Commission as well as the Sustainability Commission. And at that meeting, one of the actions were to look at 3 fields as artificial turf, one being Pacific, Sports Complex, as well as Fremont. So we took that information and then we took it to the city council thinking that Pacific might not change. So after we saw or heard the direction from council to change it from artificial turf to natural turf, then we noticed that the 2016 and 17 allocation, we weren't going to meet the deadline to spend those funds, and that's why we're here. Next time, if we come across a similar situation of any of our projects, we will come back to the CDBG Advisory Committee for some direction.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move to the next report, which is 4H.
I'll read it into the record. 4H interchanging $334,495 from YMCA All-Inclusive Locker Room Project 2122 from program year 2021-2022 with Pacific Natural Turf Project 2223 from program year 2016 to 2017. At one is motion to interchange $334,495 from YMCA All-Inclusive Locker Room Project 2122 from program year 2021-2022 with Pacific Natural Turf Project 2022-23 from program year 2016 to 2017.
So this report, as I mentioned, the $1,090,000 that you didn't just approve, but we were requesting for your consideration for approval. It's $370,000 from fiscal year, program year 2016-2017, $370,000 from program year 2018-19, and $350,000 from 2019-2020. The CDBG funding from HUD has a 7-year period of performance, so unspent funds from program year 2016 to 2017 will be recaptured by the U.S. Treasury on September 30th of 2023 should it not be fully expended. The city will lose the 2016-2017 funds, and it will be returned to HUD if not spent by the deadline. The portion of the funds that are at risk, as I mentioned, are the $370,000 from program year 16-17. The Pacific Natural Turf Grass Project, which we are asking you to consider approving, will require time to begin construction, which is where I think committee members, your concern was. And will that expenditure period be reset? The answer is no, it will not be reset. Therefore, we are also asking you to interchange, which is basically swap out funds, approximately $334,495 from program year 2021-2022 YMCA of Glendale All-Inclusive Locker Room Project with funds from the program year 2016-2017 Pacific Natural Grass Project that we are asking you to consider funding, so that it will allow the funding from program year 2016-17 to be expended before the September 2023 deadline. There will be approximately $35,500 because, as I mentioned, the total project, the total program funding from 16-17 is $370,000. The $35,500 that will remain in Pacific Natural Grass Project, staff anticipates that we will be able to spend down with design costs. So by September of 2023, we anticipate that we will have an invoice to pay because we will be in the process of redesigning the project. So we should be able to expend the $35,500. The remaining $334,495 will go to YMCA, and the program funds from YMCA will be shifted to the Pacific Natural Grass Project in order to be able to expend the funds on time. The YMCA of Glendale All-Inclusive Locker Room Project is currently moving into its construction phase and will begin to expend the funds a lot sooner. The interchange will allow the city to expend the funds, like I mentioned, and thus the staff is requesting to be able to interchange, which is swap out the funds from those two projects to be able to meet the expenditure deadline. So the recommendation before you is to, assuming you approve $1,090,000 to be, to go to the Pacific Natural Grass Project, is to swap out the portion of the funds, $334,495, with the YMCA project in order to be able to expend the funds on time. That concludes my presentation.
Questions, Mr. Armenian?
So just for clarification, those funds that are currently unspent by YMCA, are they going to be replaced with more current funds, or what's that, where is that funding from?
So the committee member, Armenian committee members, the funds are currently in the YMCA project. So all we're doing is taking $334,495 from the Y project, moving it to Pacific Natural Turf, moving the Natural Grass, moving the Pacific Natural Grass project money into YMCA.
more
So it's
current money.
basically just swapping out. So the budget remains the same for both. It's just,
Right.
basically, it's an administrative technicality to swap out the years.
It's more, it's, the money you're putting into the YMCA has more time, has more clock on it than,
Well, they started.
No, the clock remains the same. So the program funds, from 2016, 2017, the 370,000, no matter what project it's in, has to be spent down. The reason we're trying to move it into the Y project is the Y project is closer to construction,
and
so
so you
they'll
can
be
use it.
able to, exactly. So they'll be able to expend the funds down sooner than the city will with the Pacific Natural Grass Project. So that's the only thing, is swapping the funding so that we allow the Y to spend it down, because staff anticipates that the Y is closer to going into construction and expending the funds.
so it's giving the city more time.
Giving the city more time to be able to spend the funds that were originally allocated to the Y, which is from 2021, 2022.
And I assume all these are within the HUD guidelines. We're okay to do all this stuff. I just want to double check.
Chair.
We are doing it, but we're doing it.
Yes, they are. Chair Garibian, members of the advisory committee, it's actually, HUD is actually encouraging us to find ways to spend down the money so it doesn't go back to the U.S. Treasury.
As long as it's legal. Mr. Armenian, I mean, Avitisyan, sorry.
I just want to make a motion.
Oh, no other questions? No? We're good. Go ahead.
Want to make, that's the H, correct?
No, we're doing two, we're doing
it's
both.
Chair Garibian, just to make sure we don't confuse the two, if you don't mind, we can take them as two separate items. If you could consider a motion to reprogram the $1,090,000 returned from the canceled Pacific Artificial Turf Multipurpose Field projects from program years 2016-17, 2018-19, 2019-20 to Pacific Natural Grass Project 22-23 first, if there's a motion for that.
I make the,
Or if we do that and then 4H doesn't go through, what happens to the first 4G approval?
Chair Garibian,
It should be subject to, I don't know, I'm just thinking.
Well, no, H depends on G being approved, assumes. So,
We can approve
That is-
1,090,000 and then H says, I don't want to swap or whatever. you know.
Chair
I think
Garibian,
a
it's
safe
just
bet.
that H assumes that G would be approved. So if H does not get approved, then I think we'd have to come back with a report to reconsider swapping funds in a different way that would meet the majority of the committee's direction.
I
So,
just want to make sure we won't run into a problem down there if it's separately versus we can combine them as one subject to each other, or mirror each other, but that's fine.
either way.
for it now.
Go ahead.
Right. Okay. Once more, I'm gonna make a motion to approve the project of the, 4G, $1,090,000, to the Pacific, Natural Grass Project. Transferring it, yeah.
You can just say this.
Make the motion, okay. The motion to reprogram the $1,090,000 returned from the Council Pacific Artificial Turf Multipurpose Field Project from program years of 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2019, 2020 to a Pacific Natural Gas Project of 22, 23 program years.
I'll second.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Avedisian,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian is absent. Chair Garibian.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
So 4H, do we have a motion on 4H?
I'll make a,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to interchange $334,495 from YMCA All-Inclusive Locker Room Project 2122 from program year 2021-2022 with Pacific Natural Turf Project 2223 from program year 2016 to 2017.
I'll second.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Avedisian,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Quinones Gabrielian is absent. Chair Garibian.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Next.
Next is item 5, committee staff comments.
Who wants
I have a general question.
Go ahead.
My question basically is, going back to, I think we've talked about this maybe a couple of years back, in regards to city programs, city projects, like this Pacific Park or whichever other projects. Now that I'm seeing the city is moving forward to what you call a high-speed level or fast-paced planning and permitting and all that process. Does the city programs or projects have any limitations with that, or can we like go ahead of line? Because city projects, we know what it is, and timeline-wise, can we speed it up somehow? Is there a way of doing that, or we have to go through that same process that every other project goes through?
Chair Garibian, members of the committee, working with our new community development director, we're going to ask him and his staff to streamline our processes and our projects. So we finally made an offer to a park planner, and that position will be filled hopefully by December 4th. So the new employee will come in and work with the other planners and the permitting department to expedite our permits and processes. So I hope that answers your question, but we are hoping that the new employee will work closely with, let it be Public Works, CDD, GWP in the permitting process and get these projects moving.
Okay, thank you. That's actually good progress if it does happen. And this is just for this project or any project coming forward?
Any
in the
project coming
future?
forward.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? No comments?
I'll just say generally, thank you to staff for very robust information and packets. Really appreciate all the information. I know that it takes a lot of effort to put this together and all the diligence with which you pursue all these programs. So thank you for all that, and thank you in advance, because I know you're going to be dealing with all the applications and the RFP process. That is a cumbersome process in the coming couple of months, so appreciate your efforts.
Well, again, thank you for the staff as well. Great job, like always. You guys are making us look good on sitting here with all the information. And thank you to my colleagues. I guess I was extended my chairmanship for 5 more months. And so I'm going to make sure I'll be here next 5 months. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we're going to adjourn at, my time says 3:11. Oh, I'm sorry. Any comments from staff?
We do have some staff comments. Thank you very much, Chair Garibian, members of the advisory committee. We just wanted to remind the committee that we go before the city council with this information, the program priorities, the RFP, and our funding allocation plan on November 15th. I believe it's at 3 o'clock, Mr. Bolanikian. Is it still at 2 or 3?
Either 2 or 3, depending
We
on
will-
how busy the agenda is.
We'll definitely let the committee know exactly what time it will be on. And then we also wanted to let you know that CDBG staff will be reaching out to the advisory committee to schedule in-person community agency visits. We are now going back to our in-person visits, so you'll get to see CDBG-funded agencies kind of in action. And that being said, if I may, we had shown the Campbell Center last week. Each time we meet, we're going to try and do a spotlight on one community agency that receives CDBG funds and let the public and the committee know how the CDBG funds are spent and all the good work that's being done in the community. So this week we have, this meeting time, we have Glendale Youth Alliance. So I'll turn it over to Iris to show that.
Glendale Youth Alliance has been working in this community assisting youth in need with employment. We're very excited and proud to announce one of our new programs designed to assist the youth of the community with employment services, specifically for youth ages 18 to 25 who have been impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. This program is designed to provide initially with gas card, purchase of work attire, as well as possibly grocery card purchase and utility bill payment. Also included in the program is assistance with finding a job, case management, as well as training. The overarching goal of this program is, as we meet the youth and know more about the needs, to assist the youth to get back in the workforce.
The Employment Incentive Program is a wonderful opportunity for out-of-school youth between the ages of 18 to 24 who are looking for long-term employment. We incentivize local businesses to hire our participants by placing them with a business for 200 hours where they can gain all the experience and training that they might need in order to be the ready-to-go employee that that business needs.
It's been a very rewarding experience, I believe, for both us and the students that have been involved.
We have over 60 youth that have been placed with us through the Glendale Youth Alliance for the youth to experience different job sites, different areas that they might not have access to. And the GYA actually helps to have the youth to be prepared for their first interview, to different skills that it takes to succeed. And it's amazing to see how they've transformed and have really grown as young adults.
What we find in working with Glendale Youth Alliance is that our skills are developed because we have access to a youth perspective, technology skills that are more current, and risk-taking.
We love to mentor the youth and provide them the opportunity to grow, and this is a very nurturing environment for them. They are able to just explore and see what is out there.
You really become ingrained in the lives and the experiences of the folks that you mentor, and you can't typify GYA youth. They're all very different, all very unique, all have different interests, all have different backgrounds, all have different paths in life, and it's really great that they get to use here as a stepping stone.
GYA plays a very important part in the community because it gives teenagers like me the opportunity to gain job experiences that will help us in the future to become better workers and serve the community.
I've learned a lot of skills over the time I was at GYA. It's a really good stepping stone for me. I learned a lot about teamwork and use those skills in real life. Bring that work experience to the current job that I'm working at.
Me personally, I've never had help. I've always been left alone to handle things myself. Now that there's like people behind me.
It's thanks to GYA that I get to put myself at working at Grocery Outlet. I was really excited. I told my mom about it, and she was excited too that I was getting my real first job.
GYA has given me the freedom to explore the administrative side of medicine and made me realize that things that I like and maybe dislike.
Working in Glendale Unified School Districts give me a lot of opportunities, and this is a good start. It's a great learning experience.
I'm interested in pursuing medicine in the future, and with this exposure, I will be able to decide what field or what profession I want to pursue in the future.
Find their voice, they find what they want to do in life.
It was a great opportunity to have a youth worker who actually represents the constituency we serve, right? The students of Glendale.
There's fewer things more rewarding than being a part of someone else's journey and knowing that you made an impact.
And I encourage all the businesses in the community to also find out more about this program and get involved.
Shout out to Armin and Annie for their mentorship. Thank you, GYA, for the experience.
And now it's life-changing.
And the love and support you gave me.
Very nice.
Bravo, bravo, it's great.
Great production, but great program itself.
Yeah, especially Glendale Youth Lounge, we have visited their site. We haven't even seen them work actually on the streets, on the hills. Great program and great agency.
Yep.
Thank you. Anything else? We can adjourn? All right, we are adjourned at 3:17 today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.